Sabbath to you all.
Good Sabbath.
I'm Brother Desmond. Reading for me today is Brother Rod, coming to you on behalf of the Vineyard of Israel, Orlando. We are headquartered in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm Pastor Al Bell, and we want to say welcome. And I'll say before we get started, if you'd like to continue to help further the ministry, you can go online and donate at thevineyardofisrael.com. We certainly do appreciate all the folks that do go and do that. All right. So we hit pause on our series that we've been going through, the Exodus of the New Testament. And the Most High willing, we'll pick that up and finish it off next week or sometime coming. That's a fourth part. I thought it was going to be 3, possibly 4. That's a fourth part, and we'll get to that. What we are going to undertake today, the title of today's lesson is How to Do Wrong Right. How to do wrong right. I must keep this feast in Jerusalem. Now, what an interesting title, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, because what we're talking about is doing wrong right. That in and of itself is an oxymoron when it comes to service of God. However, because feast season is upon us, it was settled in my heart to take a look at the feast, right? It's almost like there was a movie series out called How to Get Away with Murder. Mm-hmm. I've never watched it, but I've seen the title and I've seen the series, and I've always wondered, why would someone want to get away with murder? The best way to get away with murder is don't commit it, right? And the best way not to do wrong is to do right. And so when we're talking about how to do wrong right, what essentially we're talking about or looking at is, from a covenantal perspective, how to keep the feast, right? From a covenantal perspective, how to keep the feast. And what we're going to attempt to do by the help and hand of the Lord is go through the series of scriptures objectively, right? We're going to go through this very objectively. We're going to put some things out on the table and allow for you to go forth and test the veracity of what we're putting on the table, right? Is it accurate or not? We're going to look at it from a scholastic point of view, where we're going to read, what does the contract say? What does the covenant say? Right? Because we run into what we call a mixing of wines. What does that mean?
Bottle.
Yeah. Taking old covenant things that were given to old covenant Jerusalem under the law of Moses and mixing them and saying, well, we're going to do this today. We're going to keep this today. But some of it doesn't apply because of X, Y, and Z. We're going to see, does this stuff apply, right? Because quite frankly, when we read through the scriptures, what we find is there is no do this to the best of your ability. You're either hot or you're cold. You're either in or out. You're either keeping the law or you're not. Right? And that's what let's go ahead and open up Galatians chapter 3. Let's look at Galatians chapter 3, and let's get started. Lay the premise here, because we will say that some things are fulfilled, or some things are done away with pertaining to the old covenant, or that we can or cannot do some things pertaining to the old covenant in the feast days. But we're going to look at that and see, is that permissible or not? And maybe by the end of this, at least allow for you to consider that maybe there's a better way. Maybe there's more understanding here. We got a lot of ground to cover. Brother Rod, I'm going to ask for you to read very fast. Hopefully folks will tap in or go back and get the scriptures, be able to hit play, pause on YouTube, but get your Bible out, because we're going to look at wordplay. We're going to look at the very nuances within the covenant, within the contract, within the agreement, within the law, that it is going to allow for us to see, can we take things out and still make this all applicable? So Galatians chapter 3, let's open up here. Galatians 3 and 10. We're going to read 10 through 12 here, Brother Rod. Galatians 3 and 10. When you got it, go ahead and read.
For as many as are of the works of the law are under the curse. For it is written, cursed is every one that continueth not in all things which are written in the book of the law to do them.
Yeah, so cursed is everyone that continueth not in what?
All things.
In everything. right? So what he's saying here, what Paul is laying out is if you're going to keep the law, you have to keep all of the law, right? Finish. Go ahead. Keep reading.
11. But that no man is justified by the law in the sight of God.
Yes.
It is evident, for the just shall live by faith.
Or the justified will live by their faith. Read 12.
And the law is not of faith, but the man that doeth them shall live in them.
Yeah, if you decide to do the law is not, the law is of works, right? Your righteousness, you're trying to be justified, you're trying to do these things. That is not of faith, that is of works. But if you're going to do them, that's how you're going to live, right? That's how you're going to live. But cursed is everyone that continueth not in all things. What does that mean? Let's go back to Deuteronomy 27. Let's see where Paul got this from. Because Paul got his teaching and what he was teaching from the law and the prophets. And so in Deuteronomy 27, we're going to get one verse. This is where Paul pulled this from. When the law was given, they went up on the mount. They understood the blessings and the cursings, right? And the blessings and the cursings in the 28th chapter of Deuteronomy, where this is surmised, it says that in the first 14 verses, if you do this, you'll be blessed. However, if you don't continue in all things, then there's going to be death or curses poured out upon you. That's what the law is about, right? Blessings and cursing. So let's see where he pulled it from. Deuteronomy 27, just the last verse here, verse 26. Go ahead.
Cursed be he that confirmeth not all the words of this law to do them.
Yes.
And all the people shall say, Amen.
Yeah. So again, go up on the mount, one on Mount Nebo, one on the other mountain, and they're proclaiming the blessings and cursings. And cursed is he that confirmeth not all the words. You've got to do everything. It's not pick a little bit here and a little bit there, or we're going to excuse this or excuse that, or we're in the land of our captivity, we can't do this or can't do. No, if you're going to live by the law, you have to do it all, right? So if you're going to do wrong, then let's look at how you do wrong right. And what we're saying here, wrong here is continuing under the law that was given to Moses, under the old covenant, right? What we're proposing is that there is a better way to understand how these things were fulfilled. Now that may be another lesson. We may not have the opportunity to talk through that today, but flip over to Acts the 18th chapter. Right? Because we can't do a hybrid covenant. You can't have curses
And be under Christ.
and be under Christ. Right? We could have continued on in Galatians the 3rd chapter, and those would have been the next few verses, because Christ became a curse for us.
Yeah.
So you can't claim to be under a curse and claim Christ. And so we're mixing covenants, but oftentimes we don't realize that until it's pointed out to us. But again, let's examine this a little more. Acts 18, we're going to read 18 through 21 here, Brother Ron. Acts 18 through 21. So let's put some things in context. Again, how to do wrong right. I must go to Jerusalem to keep the feast. So we're talking about feast days and what this entails under the old covenant. Acts 18 and 18. Go ahead, Brother Ron.
And Paul, after this, tarried there yet a good while.
Yes.
And then took his leave of the brethren, and sailed thence into Syria. And with him Priscilla and Aquila, having shorn his head in Cenchrea, for he had a vow.
Yes.
And he came to Ephesus and left them there.
Yes.
But he himself entered into the synagogue and reasoned with the Jews.
So Paul came to Ephesus. Go ahead.
When they desired him to tarry longer time with them, he consented not.
Yeah, so he didn't want to stay any longer with them in Ephesus. Why? Go ahead.
But bade them farewell, saying,
What?
I must by all means keep the feast that cometh in Jerusalem.
He must do what?
Keep the feast that cometh in Jerusalem.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, because we have to place all of this in context. We have to use proper biblical hermeneutics, which entails the proper audience relevance. Who's writing? To whom is it writing? What's going on in the time frame? Is it time relevant? All of these things have to be placed in order to get the right context, right? And so Paul is this now again. So is this before or after Christ died? Yeah, this is after, right? This is many years after Christ died. So let me ask you another question.
They're in captivity here.
Well, let me ask you another question. Was there still a temple standing in Jerusalem at this time?
Yes.
Okay. So this is after, if we would prescribe some dates to this is after around 30 AD, when we would say Christ was crucified. But this is before 70 AD, which is, what's the significance of that?
The end.
Yeah, the end. But what
marriage.
happened? Huh?
Marriage.
There's, yep. What was destroyed?
Temple.
Okay. So there was a temple. Now that's going to be vital. It's going to be vitally important to understand this as we go through the lesson. What is the interaction of the law and the temple and the priesthood and all of the things that will occur or that goes along with keeping a feast? Okay? So this is after Christ died, but this is before the destruction of the temple. We're in a transition period.
Correct.
But Paul says, I must reread verse 21 from the top.
But bade them farewell, saying, I must by all means keep the feast that cometh in Jerusalem.
Yes.
But I will return again unto you, if God will. And he sailed from Ephesus.
Yeah. So feast keeping, from Paul's perspective, has to be done where? In Jerusalem. Okay. So in Jerusalem. Let's go and look, because some scholars argue, was this the Feast of Tabernacles or was this the Feast of Pentecost? Either way, we're going to look at when you were supposed to go back to Jerusalem regardless. Skip over to the 20th chapter, and we're going to read verses 15 through 17 here. More Paul. Go ahead.
20 and 15.
Yeah.
And we sailed thence, and came the next day over against Chios. And the next day we arrived at Samos.
Yes.
And tarried at Trigothalim. And the next day we came to Miletus.
Yes.
For Paul had determined to sail by Ephesus.
Yep.
Because he would not spend the time in Asia.
Yes.
For he hasted it, if it were possible for him to be at Jerusalem the day of Pentecost.
Okay, so now here we have a very specific feast. Which one is this?
Pentecost.
The Feast of Weeks, or Pentecost as it's called, right? And Paul wanted to be where?
Jerusalem.
Okay, so let's go look at the day of Pentecost in the second chapter of Acts. So now we've got a couple of accounts where Paul is desiring or driving himself to be back in Jerusalem to keep the feast. It's important, right? It's important. We're going to figure out why this is important, right? Let's look at this. Acts 2, we're going to pick it up at verse 1, and then we're going to do a little bit of skipping here after verse 1, just so we can get the setting here. Go ahead.
And when the day of Pentecost was fully come, they were all with one accord in one place.
Okay, so this is not happenstance that people were in one accord or in one place. We'll see that. We're going to go back to the law and look at that. Skip down to verse 5. Let's see who was there. We're going to read 5 through 11 here, Rod. Go ahead.
And there were dwelling at Jerusalem devout men out of every nation under heaven.
And where were they?
Jerusalem.
Yeah, so they were in Jerusalem. It's Pentecost. And there were devout men out of where? Every nation.
Yep.
So they had come and made a pilgrimage, if you will, back to Jerusalem. Let's see. Keep going.
Now when this was noised abroad, the multitude came together and were confounded, because that every man heard them speak in his own language.
Yes.
And they were all amazed and marveled, saying one to another, Behold, are not all these which speak Galileans? And how hear we every man in our own tongue, wherein we were born?
So this is an interesting thing that happened. This is a phenomenon that happened, and we know, and this is not what we're here for, but these men were Jews that were born in other nations. So they had another tongue, right? Or another language. Let me say it that way.
Correct.
Right? And in that other language, they understood that they were to go back to Jerusalem for a feast such as Pentecost. And so now when the Holy Spirit fell, he put a pure language on the table, right? Through the licks of fire. And now these men were confused because, let's say, Rod, you speak Spanish, you speak Portuguese. You know I don't, right? If that's all you spoke, but then I began to speak and you began to hear me speaking plainly in Portuguese, then you would be confounded.
Correct.
How is it that I hear this man speaking Portuguese? I know he's not. Isn't he a Galilean?
Yeah.
Right? Isn't he a Floridianite?
Yeah.
How is he speaking Portuguese? So we have different nations and different languages, but these men are come back to Jerusalem. Keep reading.
9. Parthians and Medes and Elamites, and the dwellers in Mesopotamia, and in Judea, in Cappadocia, in Pontus, in Asia.
Yeah, he's naming off. Keep going.
Phrygia and Pamphylia,
Yes.
in Egypt,
Yes.
and in the parts of Libya about Cyrene, and strangers of Rome, Jews and proselytes, Greeks and Arabians. We do hear them speak in our tongues the wonderful works of God.
Yeah, so we have all of these nations that have come back to Jerusalem, right? The great city that reigneth over the kings of the earth, right? They would come back into Jerusalem because of, well, let's go look at it. Let's go back to Deuteronomy 16. So now we've established that Paul says, by all means, I must go to Jerusalem to keep the feast. And let's see why. Let's see why. Deuteronomy 16. We're going to read one verse here. We're going to come back to Deuteronomy 16 at some point in the lesson. But maybe. Deuteronomy 16 and 16. Right? 16 and 16. So this is what's written in the contract or the agreement or the law. Go ahead.
3 times in a year shall all the males appear before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose.
Okay, so pause. I want you to highlight. I want you to circle. I want you to do whatever you underline. These words right here. I told you it's very, very specific. In the place which he shall choose. Right? So 3 times, all the males will have to come in the place which, who is he?
The Lord.
Yeah, the Most High. Yeah. When he chooses a place, this is the place in which you got to come 3 times a year. Go ahead. When?
In the feast of unleavened bread.
Yes.
And in the feast of weeks.
Yes.
And in the feast of tabernacles.
Yes.
And they shall not appear before the Lord empty.
So he gives the 3 times, right? Unleavened bread, the feast of weeks, which we were just reading, is also called Pentecost, and the feast of tabernacles. 3 times a year, there is a pilgrimage. There is an appointed time, a moedim. There is a feast in which you were to come back, right, to Jerusalem. So that's why these men in Acts, the 2nd chapter, were in all one place and in one accord that had come from every nation, because they were supposed to pilgrimage according to the law back to Jerusalem. Let's go to Leviticus 23, right? Because these are the appointed times here. These are the appointed times. And we're gonna lay some things out to get some understanding about context here. Leviticus 23. Now, before we start, pop quiz. Okay. Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Moses, it includes your, Genesis, but during this time frame, when we're reading about Leviticus and they're receiving the law and the instructions, the statutes and commandments, are they in the promised land yet? No. Where are they?
The wilderness.
They're in the wilderness, right? They're in the wilderness. Now, this is important as we look into Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, and I'm going to tell you why. Because there's progressive thought going into these appointed times. There's progressive thought that will go into Leviticus, the 23rd chapter. There's prophetic. While they were in the wilderness, there was prophecy of things that they were supposed to do when they got into the land. Okay? So Leviticus 23, let's pick it up at verse 1. Leviticus 23 and verse 1. Go ahead.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, concerning the feast of the Lord, which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocations. Even these are my feasts.
Yeah, these are my appointed times. I want you to speak to the children of Israel and proclaim these convocations or these appointed times, right? Let's see what he starts out with. Go ahead.
6 days shall work be done. But the 7th day is the Sabbath of rest.
Yes.
A holy convocation.
So here's an appointed time I want you to have, right? The 7th day, the Sabbath, is an appointed time. What? Go ahead.
Ye shall do no work therein. It is a Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwellings.
In all your dwellings. Now, in all your dwellings, you should highlight or underline that, right? Because the in all your dwellings was applicable to the children of Israel while they were in the wilderness, right? They could keep the Sabbath, and they were expected to keep the Sabbath even in the wilderness.
Right, because they live in the tent.
Yeah, yep. This is what they were supposed to do, right? This was, hold your mark here. Let's go to Exodus 20 real quick. Exodus 20. Exodus 20, because this was a part of what Moses received on Sinai, right? If we were starting in the 19th chapter, he called Moses and said, hey, get the people together in 3 days, come not at your wild garments clothes. And then he came upon the mount. And this is a part of what he gave to them as they came out of Egypt, right? So Exodus 20, and I want you to read verses 8 through 11 here. Go ahead.
Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy.
Oh, wait. Remember the Sabbath day, right? He's commanding the children of Israel to remember the Sabbath day. Remember what about the Sabbath day? Why set it apart? Why sanctify it? Okay, we'll go look at that here in a second. Go ahead.
6 days thou shalt labor and do all thy work.
Yes.
But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou nor thy son, nor thy daughters, thy maidservant,
yes,
nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates.
Yes.
For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth,
yes,
the sea and all in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it.
Yeah, and hallowed it. So he gave, by the way, this is the first time we see the Sabbath given to man. I'm going to pause there for a second for dramatic effect. This is the first time that we see the Sabbath given to man. The Sabbath was not given to man in Genesis. Go back and read it. Go back and study it, right? But he said, remember. Remember what? We have to go get all the terms of the contract and the agreement. We have to be very thorough if we're going to look at this the right way, because words matter, right? So go to Deuteronomy. I told you how to hold a mark in Leviticus, but go to Deuteronomy, the 5th chapter, right? Remember what? Why remember? Let's go fill in some of the blanks here, right? Deuteronomy chapter 5, pick it up at verse 1. We're going to read a few verses here. We're going to do a little skipping. Let me see what we want. Deuteronomy 5 and 1. Go ahead. Because by the way, this is the same account. This is a recap of what happened in Exodus. So in Deuteronomy, as Moses is getting ready to basically die for the Lord to take him, he's setting the people up and he's giving this soliloquy and he's recapping everything that had happened in the wilderness over the 40 years. That's what Deuteronomy is. So he's going to give a recap of what we just read, but pay attention to this. Deuteronomy 5 and 1.
And Moses called all Israel and said unto them,
Yes.
Hear, O Israel, the statutes and judgments which I speak in your ears this day,
Yes.
that ye may learn them and keep and do them.
Yes.
The Lord our God made a covenant with us in Horeb.
Yeah, that was in Horeb, even in Sinai, in Exodus 19 and 20. Read it.
The Lord made not this covenant with our fathers, but with us, even us, who are all of us here alive this day.
So this is very hermeneutics, right? Very pertinent to the children of Israel that came out of Egypt and were standing, right? We're standing on Horeb at Sinai that day.
Correct.
He said this covenant, he didn't make this covenant with our fathers. He made the covenant with us. Keep reading.
The Lord talked with us face to face in the mount of the mist of fire.
And that was Exodus 19 and 20. Skip down though, because this is what I want. Skip down because he's going to go through the same 10 commandments. But watch this, verse 12. Read.
Keep the Sabbath day to sanctify it, as the Lord thy God hath commanded thee.
Yeah, set it apart. Go ahead.
6 days thou shalt labor and do all thy work.
Yes.
But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God.
Yes.
In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thine ox, nor thine ass, nor any of thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates.
Yes.
That thy manservant and thy maidservant may rest as well as thou.
So now he's adding a little more meat than what we've seen in Exodus 20, right? He's saying that your manservant, they may rest as well as you. Why is this important? Verse 15, this is what we came here for.
And remember.
And wait, you remember, I asked, why is he saying remember in Exodus 20? Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy? This is the remember. Remember what? This is the importance of the Sabbath that was given to the children of Israel. He's telling them, this is what you need to remember. Remember what?
And remember that thou was a servant in the land of Egypt.
That's what you need to remember. That's why the Sabbath was given to the children of Israel, because of the, you know why they were rescued? Because they were in hard bondage and their cries came up before the Lord. And he remembered what he told Abraham because of the hard bondage. So he said, I want you to remember Egypt, and I'm going to give you rest.
Right.
Now, this rest was a physical rest, and we've done lessons about this before. This was pointing towards something spiritual. But this is the remember part of remember the Sabbath. Remember where you came from. Remember that so you don't do it. So you don't oppress the stranger.
Correct.
So you don't oppress your manservant, your maidservant. Keep going. Finish 15. We started back at the top. Go ahead.
And remember that thou was a servant in the land of Egypt.
Yes.
And that the Lord thy God brought thee out thence through a mighty hand and by a stretched out arm. Therefore the Lord thy God commanded thee to keep the Sabbath day.
Therefore, this is why the Lord command. So, you know, I've asked other teachers, why? Remember what? Why? Why did he give the Sabbath? He tells us right here, because you were servants, you were slaves, you had bondage. So therefore, I'm going to give you rest. Again, this is pointing to something much, much greater. Go back to Leviticus, the 23rd chapter. Go back to Leviticus 23. Because the Sabbath day was given to them in the wilderness. Therefore, they could keep that in all of their dwellings, starting from the wilderness. Okay? But I want you to keep in mind, this gets progressive. Meaning this is going to mold and evolve, right? Where they were. What did I say? Leviticus 23?
Yes, sir.
I gotta find it. Go ahead.
That first one?
No, let's pick it back up at 3 and let's read down into from 3 to 8.
6 days shall work be done, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of rest, a holy convocation. You shall do no work therein. It is a Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwellings.
Go ahead.
These are the feasts of the Lord, even holy convocations, which you shall proclaim in their seasons.
So now he gave the appointed time that could be done in the wilderness, which was the Sabbath, right? That's a holy convocation. He tells us why. Be done in all your. Now he's transitioning for a second and says, now these are the feasts of the Lord. You shall proclaim them at their appointed time. These are the Moedims. These are the appointed times. These are the times in which I want to meet with you, right? Go ahead.
In the 14th day of the first month, at even, is the Lord's Passover.
Go ahead.
And in the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto the Lord. 7 days ye must eat unleavened bread.
Yes.
In the first day ye shall have a holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein.
Yes.
But ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord 7 days. In the 7th day is a holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein.
So now what we've run into is Passover and unleavened bread. This also is something that could and should have been done in the wilderness, right? Let's go to Exodus 12. Keep a marker here. We're coming right back, right? So we're looking at these feast days because he said, do this in all your dwellings. But this is also something that was given to them in the wilderness. So they could have kept these in the wilderness. Now we're going to see there's some argument. Did they continue in keeping the Passover? Well, we'll see that.
I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see.
Question mark.
Yep. Exodus 12, pick it up at verse 1. We're going to read 1 through 8 because there are things that went along with the Passover. Very specific. And went along with the Feast of Unleavened Bread. 12 and 1. Go ahead, Rob.
And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months.
Yes.
It shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of this month, they shall take to them every man a lamb according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting because in the how to do wrong right section, one of the things that gets pointed out is if you're going to try to keep the Passover today, then this is what you need to do. You need to get a lamb, and you need to examine him, you need to put him up on the 10th day, right? And then on the 14th day, that's when you kill the lamb. But this was one of the explanations of how to do wrong right. But as we continue down the path of examining, is that still right today? I would argue, no. If you're not looking, if you understand that that's not what you're supposed to do today, there's more revelation. There's fulfilling of that, right? But we're looking at the terms of the contract. Keep going. Verse 4.
Verse 4. Thank you.
Yes.
And if the household be too little for the land, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls.
Yes.
Every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb.
Mm-hmm.
Your lamb shall be without blemish,
Yep.
a male of the first year. Ye shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats.
Yes.
And ye shall keep it up unto the 14th day of the same month. And the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening.
Yes.
And they shall take of the blood and strike it on the two side posts and on the upper doorposts of the houses, wherein they shall eat it.
Yes.
And they shall eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire and unleavened bread and with bitter herbs. They shall eat it.
Yeah, yep. And I want you to skip down to verse 11. Keep reading. Go ahead.
And thus shall he eat it, with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and ye shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover.
It is the Lord's Passover. It is the Lord's Passover, right? Keep going.
For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt.
Yes.
I will execute judgment. I am the Lord.
I am the Lord. Go ahead.
And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where ye are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you.
Yes.
And the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. And this day shall be unto you for a memorial.
Oh, wait. So this day, so what day? The day of the Passover, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be a memorial,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we claim that we keep it as a memorial today. But let me ask you. They kept it as a memorial. How did they keep it as a memorial? Did they kill the lamb?
Yeah.
Did they eat the lamb with bitter herbs?
Yeah.
Right? A memorial just means a day of remembrance. Just like he said, remember you were slaves in Egypt? Remember? Remember you did these things? He's saying, remember the Passover. Remember, and this is how you shall keep the Passover. Just what I told you. Get a lamb of the first year without spot or blemish. You examine it. You kill it. 14th day, you do that. That's the memorial. It's a replay. But this is how you would still keep it. Let's keep going.
And ye shall keep the feast to the Lord throughout your generations.
Wait, so this kind of hinders some folks, right? We take the flat reading of that and we say, oh, well, this means that you're supposed to keep this forever.
Right.
For like Western forever. Like what we think eternally, forever, perpetually. And not understanding that in the Hebrew, or the understanding of this is throughout your generations. Let me ask you, because there is progressive thought and understanding. Should we be killing lambs and animals today? No. Most of us know that. So most of us know, we can read that and we can see that forever or throughout your generations doesn't apply in that manner.
Correct.
Right? We know that. There are teachers who teach that, yeah, we can read that, but we know Christ came and he was our Passover, so therefore we don't have to do that anymore. Right? So we know the applicability of forever and throughout your generations, or the usability of it, is not eternal. That should cause for us to go back to the original language and get the proper context whenever we see forever. Right? Because there are other things that you should be doing forever. You should be keeping fringes forever, right? That it says the same thing. You go to Numbers 15, it says the same thing throughout your generations. But you know what? We can acknowledge and we understand what that was pointing to. So we know that forever doesn't always mean forever, even outside of our church.
Correct.
Right? Just wanted to point that out. Go ahead.
Okay.
You shall keep it a feast to the Lord, middle of 14, throughout your generations.
Ye shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever.
Yeah, you should keep it by an ordinance forever. This is age lasting, by the way. That's what forever means here. Right? Keep going.
7 days shall ye eat unleavened bread.
Mm-hmm.
Even the first day ye shall put away leaven out of your house.
Yes.
For whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, the soul shall be cut off from Israel.
Yes, go
And in
ahead.
the first day there shall be a holy convocation.
Yep.
And in the 7th day there shall be a holy convocation to you. No manner of work shall be done in them,
Yes.
save that which every man must eat. that only may be done.
Yeah, anything that pertained to the feast. Go ahead, read.
And he shall observe the feast of unleavened bread. For in this same day have I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt.
Yes.
Therefore shall ye observe this month in your generations by an ordinance forever.
Yeah, this forever. This age lasting forever. Keep going.
In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, at even ye shall eat unleavened bread, until the 21st day of the month at even.
Yes.
7 days shall there be no leaven found in your houses. For whosoever eateth that which is leavened, even that soul shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel.
Yes.
Whether he be a stranger or born in the land. Ye shall eat nothing leavened. In all your habitations shall ye eat unleavened bread.
Okay, so let me pause here for a second. Let me go back to the point, right? We came here to show you that this was given in the wilderness, just like the Sabbath, and this could be kept in the wilderness, right? But how much of this needs to be done in order to keep this feast properly? Passover, unleavened bread. All of it.
Mm-hmm.
All of it. So if you take away some of it, right? Are you keeping the feast of unleavened bread?
No.
Not according, thank you. Not according to the, because if you're going to live in the law, you have to do what? All of it.
It's like following a recipe.
Yeah, so it should cause for us to start thinking, if some of this has been, if we acknowledge that some of this has been fulfilled and done away with, then maybe I'm not operating properly according to what's written. Because there's no mixing. You can't take half of this out and leave the other half. Right? So let's go look at this in the wilderness. Yeah, exactly. Let's go to Numbers, the 9th chapter. Let's just point this out because, as I said, we're going back to Leviticus 23. This is progressive. The Sabbath was given in the dwellings. Then he gave Passover and unleavened bread. They could keep that in the wilderness, and they were supposed to keep that in the wilderness until that evolved. We're going to look at that here in a second. And then we'll go back to Leviticus 23. So Numbers chapter 9, pick it up at verse 1 when you got it, Brother Rod. Go ahead.
And the Lord spake unto Moses in the wilderness of Sinai.
So where are they?
In the wilderness
They're
of
in
Sinai.
the wilderness. Okay, go ahead.
In the first month of the 2nd year, after they were come out of the land of Egypt, saying.
Okay, so again, the details are important. People say the devil are in the details. No, the understanding is in the details. Right? So sometimes you got to hunker down, right? You hear Pastor Al talk about it all the time. When we read, names, and we read dates and this king and that king, and it gets boring. Sometimes our mind drifts, but we have to stay conscious because it's important. This is where the details are. Now, don't go back and look at it. What year is this after they came out of Egypt?
2nd year.
This is the 2nd year, right? We just read the 1st year. The night that he brought them out of Egypt is Exodus 12. So this is the year after. Go ahead.
Verse 2.
Yes.
Let the children of Israel also keep the Passover at his appointed season.
So you could keep the Passover in the wilderness. They're in the wilderness. This is the 2nd year, and they're told to do this. Go ahead.
In the 14th day of this month at even, he shall keep it in his appointed season, according to all the rites of it.
According to what?
All the rites of it.
Just it's a memorial, but you got to do it just like how it was shown to do. Right? Go ahead.
He shall keep it in his appointed season, according to all the rites of it, and according to all the ceremonies thereof shall he keep it.
Yes.
And Moses spake unto the children of Israel that they should keep the Passover.
Yeah, you got to keep the Passover, guys. Moedim, appointed time. It's the season. Go ahead.
And they kept the Passover on the 14th day of the first month at even in the wilderness of Sinai.
Yeah, so you could keep this in the wilderness, just like you could keep the Sabbath in the wilderness. Go ahead.
According to all that the Lord commanded Moses, so that the children of Israel.
Yes.
And there were certain men who were defiled by the dead body of a man, that they could not keep the Passover on that day.
Yeah, cleanliness laws. Go ahead.
And they came before Moses and before Aaron on that day. And those men said unto him, We are defiled by the dead body of a man. Wherefore are we kept back, that we may not offer an offering of the Lord in his appointed season among the children of Israel?
Yeah, so they knew they had to offer an offering, right? Or else they'd be cut off. Right? Go ahead. Verse 8.
And Moses said unto them, Stand still, I will hear what the Lord will command concerning you.
Okay, so let's go back to Leviticus 23. So there was a 2nd Passover in the 2nd month, right? That's what was instituted here. But I wanted to go here to show you that they could keep the Sabbath and they could keep Passover and unleavened bread in the wilderness. So Leviticus 23. Now pay attention to this transition because we just read verse 8. So we read 1 through 8. Verse 1 says, and the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, and he gave them the things that they could do right then in the wilderness. Now he's going to transition in verse 9, and he's going to almost start over. Pay attention to this transition. Verse 9.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying,
What?
speak unto the children of Israel.
But he already told them that. Right? Leviticus 23 and 9. He was already speaking to Moses. So this is a break because it's transitioning here. So he told him in verse 1, the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel. In verse 9, he's repeating that. Speak unto the children of Israel and say what?
When he be come into the land.
Wait, when you come where?
Into the land.
Oh. So now what we're about to hear is predicated upon doing what?
Being on the land.
Coming into land. So these, what we're about to read, you can't do in the wilderness.
Yep.
Right? You can't do these whatever he's about to say. He says, when you come into the land, then this is when the starting point is going to be for what I'm about to tell you to do. Let's read it. Go ahead.
Which I give unto you.
Yes.
And shall reap the harvest thereof. Then it shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest unto the priest.
Oh, okay. So this has to do with the land.
Mm-hmm.
When you come into the land and you reap off of the land, then you got to bring, go ahead, read.
And he shall wave the sheaf before the Lord to be accepted for you.
Yes.
On the morrow after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it.
Yes, go ahead.
And he shall offer that day when he waved the sheaf, a he lamb without blemish of the first year, for a burnt offering unto the Lord.
Yeah, and all of this is pointing to something. We're not here for that specifically, but keep reading.
And the meat offering thereof shall be 2/10 deals of fine flour mingled with oil.
Yes.
An offering made by fire unto the Lord for
Yeah.
a sweet savor.
Mm-hmm.
And the drink offering thereof shall be of wine, the fourth part of a hin.
Yes.
And they shall eat neither bread, nor parched corn, nor green ears, until the selfsame day that ye have brought an offering unto your God.
Yes.
It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings.
Now, this in all your dwellings doesn't pertain to a camp in the wilderness.
Physical house.
This pertains to where you get set up in the land.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But so he says when you come into the land, you can't do stuff like in verse 14, you can't eat bread or you can't eat parched corn nor green ears. This is specific to when you get into the land, right? Keep reading.
And he shall count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day that ye were brought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths shall be complete.
Okay, so now this is talking about Feast of Weeks or Pentecost.
Mm-hmm.
So Pentecost is predicated upon the first fruits, which is predicated upon being in the land.
Correct.
Right? So you can't do this until you get into the land. Finish 16.
Even unto the morrow after the seventh Sabbath shall ye number 50 days. And he shall offer a new meat offering unto the Lord.
Unto the Lord. Let's go look at something. Let's go to Joshua the 5th chapter. Hold a marker here. Let's go to Joshua chapter 5. Let's prove this out. Because what we're talking about is applicable to the old covenant Israelites. Right? This is what they're given. And we want to impose and superimpose that on today to say, well, we can't do this, but we can do this, so we're keeping the law to the best of our ability. Can't do that. Joshua chapter 5, pick it up in verse 1. Joshua 5 and 1. Go ahead, let's look at something here.
And it came to pass when all the kings of the Amorites, which were on the side of Jordan westward, and all the kings of the Canaanites, which were by the sea, heard that the Lord had dried up the waters of Jordan from before the children of Israel,
Yep.
until we were passed over, that their heart melted, neither was their spirit in them anymore, because of the children of Israel.
Yeah, and by the way, all this means is this is action. It's time to move into the land, right? So Moses died, right? And now they crossed over the Jordan by the hand of Joshua. And now the kings it was the land of Canaan,
mm-hmm.
right? So when we look at and we see the Jordan and we see the Canaanites, These were the kings that were in the land. They're about to start to take over the land.
The cup's full.
Read.
At that time the Lord said unto Joshua, make thee a sharp knife, and circumcise again the children of Israel the second time.
Yeah, this is interesting. Go ahead.
And Joshua made him sharp knives, and circumcised the children of Israel at the hill of foreskins.
Yes, go ahead.
And this is the cause why Joshua did circumcise.
Why?
All the people that came out of Egypt that were males, even all the men of war, died in the wilderness by the way after they came out of Egypt.
Yeah, so this is interesting. We read in Numbers the 9th chapter, the second year they were commanded to keep the Passover. And then as time progressed, Moses sent out spies into the land and they came back with an evil report. They didn't have it mixed with faith. And all of a sudden, you know, he said, this is the Most High said, this is the 10th time. All of you, 20 years old and upward, the men of war, you're going to die in this wilderness. And you're going to go a day for a year, 40 years, you're going to circle this wilderness. So very shortly after they came out of Egypt, they stopped doing the Passover. Even though they were supposed to. They could have, but they stopped. And so after the time in which those men died off, now Joshua said, in order to inherit the promised land, you must be circumcised in order to pass over. All right, so there's a lot going into that. It's a whole nother lesson, but keep going.
5.
Yes.
Now all the people that came out were circumcised.
Yes.
But all the people that were born in the wilderness by the way as they came forth out of Egypt, then they had not circumcised.
Skip down to verse 8. We wanted something else. Go ahead.
And it came to pass when they had done the circumcising all the people,
Yes.
that they abode in their places in the camp till they were whole.
Yes.
And the Lord said unto Joshua, this day have I rolled away the reproach of Egypt from off of you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Wherefore the name of this place is called Gilgal unto this day.
Yeah, go ahead.
And the children of Israel encamped in Gilgal, and kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month, and even in the plains of Jericho.
In the plains of Jericho, they kept what? The Passover, right? You could do that. They could have did that in the wilderness. But watch what else they did, right? Because now they're in the plains of Jericho, which is in the land. What did they do? Go ahead.
And they did eat of the old corn of the land on the morrow after the Passover.
Yes.
Unleavened cakes and parched corn in the same day.
Ah.
God.
So now we're starting. Now we're starting to count to understand that once we get into the land, these other things progressively now, right, can happen. Now they can eat the parched corn. Now they can eat of the land. And guess what else is going to happen? The manna's going to stop. There's no need for miracles when you get into the promised land, right? Read it through 12.
And the manna ceased on the morrow after they had eaten that of the old corn of the land.
Yeah.
Neither had the children of Israel manna anymore.
Yes.
But they did eat of the fruit of the land of Canaan that year.
Yeah. Now can we see how this is working? Right? Let's go back to Leviticus 23. Let's look at the feast because we have to continue to prove this out. He said, but I must by all means keep the feast where?
Jerusalem.
In Jerusalem. So there's some more proving out that we have to do. So we looked at Passover and unleavened bread. We just looked at first fruits, which counts to Pentecost. But let's look at the third one real quick. Let's start lining this up. Leviticus 23, we're going to read 34 through 39 here. Go ahead.
Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, the 15th day of this 7th month shall be the feast of tabernacles for 7 days unto the Lord. On the first day shall be a holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein.
Yes.
7 days ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord.
So what do you have to do in Tabernacles? 7 days you have to offer what?
Offering.
Yeah, an offering made by this. But by the way, I want to keep. I'm foot stomping this a little bit, right? Probably too much, but I want to get the point across. You had to do all of this, right? If we went to Numbers 28, the 28th chapter, which I don't think we're going to have time to, but you should pause the video and you should go read Numbers 28th chapter. All the sacrifices and things that went into the drink offerings and the incense and all of those things that went into the Sabbath and went into the feast days, you had to do all of it if you were going to keep the feast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The men that's going to do them, you have to live in them. You have to do all of it. So where are we? Keep going.
35.
Go ahead.
On the first day shall be a holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein.
Go ahead.
7 days ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord.
Yes.
On the 8th day shall be a holy convocation unto you.
Go ahead.
And ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord.
Go ahead.
It is a solemn assembly, and ye shall do no servile work therein.
Keep reading.
These are the feasts of the Lord,
Yeah, these are the appointed times. Go ahead.
which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocations,
Mhm.
to offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord, a burnt offering,
Yes.
a meat offering,
Yes.
a sacrifice,
And what else?
a drink offering.
What?
Everything upon this day.
Yeah, if you're going to do, this is what you're going to do. This is what you have to do. Read.
Beside the Sabbath of the Lord, and beside your gifts, and beside all your vows,
Yes.
and beside all your freewill offerings, which you give unto the Lord.
Besides doing that, you have to do these things, is what he's saying,
Yeah.
on these feast days. So besides that, you don't excuse that. You do that and you do this. Read.
Also in the 15th day of the 7th month,
Mhm.
when ye have gathered in the fruit of the land.
When you gather what?
The fruit of the land.
So they have to do this where?
In the land.
This is why words matter. This is why reading the contract is important. Because this is very, very specific and applicable to the children of Israel coming out of Egypt, going into the land. These were the laws, statutes, and commandments. These were the judgments that went with the children of Israel. It was pertinent to them going into the land. If you are not in the land, can you do this?
No.
Okay. Where are we?
The middle.
Go ahead.
Ye shall keep the feast unto the Lord 7 days.
Yes.
On the first day shall be a Sabbath, and on the 8th day shall be a Sabbath.
Go to Deuteronomy, the 12th chapter. Because as I said, this was progressive. This was given to them in the wilderness. But you got to go and you got to read all of the law. Right? And you can't put scriptures up against each other. And they all go together. Right? So this is what he's saying. I told you in the 16th chapter to underline in the place in which the Lord shall choose. It's important. Right? So they could do the Sabbath, they could do Passover and unleavened bread in the wilderness. They had to wait until they got into the land. But specific to the feast days, there was prophecy that said, you do it when you get into the land, but I'm going to relegate. I'm going to choose a place. Now, once I choose that place, that's the place. You can't do it every man how just you want to do it, wherever you want to do it. Wherever I choose, that now gets locked in. It evolved. It was prophetic. He was telling that he was preparing. Deuteronomy 12. Let's look at this, because this is the understanding that we have to have when we read the contract. And we put this in its proper context. Otherwise, we think that this is applicable to us over here in Alabama and Arkansas and Antarctica, in Florida and Georgia and wherever else. Right? We read ourselves into this. I'm going to stop talking. Deuteronomy 12, read verse 1. Let's skip a little bit.
All right. 12 and 1.
Yes.
These are the statutes and judgments which ye shall observe to do them in the land.
To do them where?
In the land.
So this is again Deuteronomy. Step back 60,000 foot. Moses is doing a recap, doing a beautiful soliloquy, just recapping everything that happened. And he's reaffirming, he's affirming what was taught to them. And he's telling them, these are the statutes and judgments which you shall observe to do where?
In the land.
All right, foot stomping. Go ahead.
Which the Lord God of thy fathers giveth thee to possess it all the days that ye live upon the earth.
Skip down to verse 5. Go ahead.
But unto the place which the Lord your God shall choose out of all the tribes to put his name there.
Okay.
Even
Hold on. I'm a little dramatic. All right. Probably a little annoying. But there's going to be a place which the Lord your God is going to choose out of all your tribes. Language is important. We're going to run into this. We're going to run into this later. Right? Because we have to play this out. It has to be fulfilled. Right? So there's going to be a place which the Lord is going to choose out of all your tribes. Go ahead.
to put his name there.
To put his name there. Even what?
Even unto his habitation shall he seek, and thither thou shalt come.
Yeah, when this happens, when he chooses a place out of all the tribes, and he chooses a place to dwell and put his name, you have to go there.
Even face it when you pray.
Yeah. Yeah. When this happens, once it happens, there's no other place to go. You can keep it in all your dwellings until this happens. Right? But when it happens, that's the only place. That's the agreement. That's prophetic. Read it.
6.
Yes.
And thither ye shall bring your burnt offerings.
There you shall go to bring burnt offerings, what?
And your sacrifices,
Yes.
and your tithes, and your heave offerings
Yes.
of your hand, and your vows, and your free will offerings, and the firstlings of your herds and of your flocks.
Keep going.
And there ye shall eat before the Lord your God, and ye shall rejoice.
This is feast, by the way. This is eating and rejoicing. This is feast, and this is what you're supposed to do at the feast. He's talking about the feast. When I choose to put my name there, this is where you shall keep the feast. Read it.
In all that ye put your hand unto.
Yes.
Ye and your households, wherein the Lord thy God hath blessed thee.
Yes, read.
Ye shall not do after all the things that we do here this day.
Even in this wilderness, what?
Every man whatsoever is right in his own eyes.
Yeah, you can't do whatever you want to do when this happens. Read.
For ye are not as yet come to the rest and to the inheritance.
You have not yet come into the rest or the land of inheritance. The word rest, circle that. That's important. Good, keep going.
And to the inheritance which the Lord your God giveth you.
Yes.
But when ye do go over Jordan,
yes,
and dwell in the land which the Lord your God giveth you to inherit,
yes,
and when he giveth you rest from all your enemies round about, so that ye dwell in safety.
Yep, then what?
Then there shall be a place which the Lord your God shall choose to cause his name to dwell there.
So verse 10 and 11 goes together, right? There's a semicolon there. It's explaining, right, what's going on. And he says, when you get into the land to inherit it, even the promised land, and you have to be given rest from all your enemies. So all the rest has to happen, right? And you're going to dwell safely. Then there's going to be a point in time where I'm going to choose to place his name to dwell there. In verse 5, it's going to be a place out of all of your tribes that he's going to choose, right? All of this runs together.
Correct.
Okay, when that happens, then what? Keep going.
Thither shall ye bring all that I command you.
Yes.
Your burnt offerings, your sacrifices, your tithes, and your heave offerings of your hand, and all your choice vows which ye vow unto the Lord. And ye shall rejoice before the Lord your God. Yea, and your sons and your daughters, and your manservants and your maidservants, and the Levite that is within your gates, for as much as he had no part nor inheritance with you.
Go ahead.
Take heed to yourself that thou offer not thy burnt offerings in every place that thou seest.
Yeah, hey, be careful. Don't do it everywhere else once I do this. Read it.
But in the place which the Lord shall choose in one of thy tribes.
Yes.
There thou shalt offer thy burnt offerings, and there thou shalt do all that I command thee.
Yeah. This, did he reiterate it?
Yeah.
And you have to do how much of what he commanded?
All of it.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to decide to do this, which, by the way, let's be very clear. It's wrong right now. It was right back then. But this has been fulfilled. But if you're going to decide to do it, and you're going to claim to keep the law, you got to do it all. This is what you got to live in, right? You have to do it all. So he's got to choose something. There has to be rest, and he's got to choose a place. Let's go to 2 Samuel chapter 7. 2 Samuel 7. Ooh, I might have a tough time getting through this in a timely manner.
It's all good.
But y'all pray, because the spirit is willing. 2 Samuel 7. All right, Rob. You're going to have to help me. Help you, help me.
Stuttering more than I can.
Yeah, verse 1. 2 Samuel 7 and 1. Right? Because let's put this all together. Go ahead.
And it came to pass, when the king sat in his house, and the Lord had given him rest round about from all his enemies.
Okay, that should have triggered something.
Rest.
From all your enemies.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So the king is sitting in his house now, and he realizes he has rest from all his enemies. Let's see what happens. Go ahead.
That the king said unto Nathan.
And this
the
king
prophet,
is David. Go ahead.
See now, I dwell in a house of cedar.
Yes.
But the ark of God dwelleth within curtains.
Yeah, so there was a tabernacle. We didn't read all of this, but let me talk through it in 30 seconds or less, right? So in the wilderness, after they came down from the mount, the Lord called Moses up. He said, hey, I'm going to show you how to make this tabernacle. I want you to rear it up, get nice gold, get curtains, put the ark in there, put cherubim. This is how I want you to do it. Carry it on staves of the Levites. This is how you can. And there was a mobile tabernacle. And they used that from the time that they came out of Egypt, even through the time of the judges, when they went through and inherited the land, right? So now David is saying, man, I've got this grandiose house. I've got this beautiful palace, But the ark of the Lord is dwelling in this mobile tabernacle. Right? Go ahead.
And Nathan said to the king, go, do all that is in thy heart, for the Lord is with thee.
Yeah, so Nathan was a little presumptuous. Nathan said, hey, you got rest. The Lord been with you all this time. Go and build a house then. Go do whatever you want to do. Go ahead.
And it came to pass that night that the word of the Lord came unto Nathan, saying, go and tell my servant David.
Yes.
Thus said the Lord.
I like it. Go ahead.
Shalt thou build me a house for me to dwell in?
Are you going to build me a house to dwell in? Go ahead.
Whereas I have not dwelt in any house since the time that I have brought up the children of Israel out of Egypt, even to this day, but have walked in a tent and in a tabernacle.
That's where I was dwelling at. Go ahead.
In all the places wherein I have walked with all the children of Israel.
Yes.
Spake I a word with any of the tribes of Israel?
The tribes, huh? Key word. Have I asked any of the tribes since we came out of Egypt? Have I done this yet? Read.
Whom I commanded to feed my people Israel, saying, why build ye not me a house of cedar?
Have I asked anyone, why haven't you built? No, I haven't done that. Read.
Now therefore, so shalt thou say unto my servant David.
What?
Thus said the Lord of hosts.
Yes.
I took thee from the sheepcote, from following the sheep, to be a ruler over my people,
yes,
over Israel.
Yes.
And I was with thee whithersoever thou wentest.
Yep.
And have cut off all thy enemies out of thy sight.
Yes.
And have made thee a great name, like unto the name of the great men that are in the earth.
Yeah, and I don't blame the prophet Nathan because he did all of that for David. So when David came to him, he was like, hey, the Lord is with you, go ahead and do it. But now the Lord came to the prophet Nathan to explain this, to say, you got to go back and tell David this. Go ahead.
Moreover, I will appoint a place for my people Israel.
Yes.
And I will plant them.
Yes.
That they may dwell in a place of their own, and move no more. Neither shall the children of wickedness afflict them any more as before time.
Yeah, they got rest. Go ahead.
And as since the time that I commanded judges to be over my people Israel,
yes,
and have caused thee to rest from all thy enemies.
Go ahead.
Also the Lord telleth thee that he will make thee a house.
Yes.
And when thy days be fulfilled, and thou shalt sleep with thy fathers,
yes,
I will set up thy seed after thee, which shall proceed out of thy bowels, and I will establish his kingdom.
Read 13.
He shall build a house for my name.
Yes.
And I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever.
Do we know what just happened here? So now the Lord told Nathan, hey, in the day, pause, you got to go tell David, I didn't do this, but here's what I will do. I can't have you do it, but your seed after you. Yeah. Your seed after you, what I'm going to do is I will establish his kingdom, and I will allow for him to build a house for my name. So now he's giving David a promise. That's what David wanted for the Lord. He was a man after God's own heart. Right? He had a plush palace. He had rest. He wanted the ark to be in a grandiose temple. And so now the Lord is telling Nathan, I'm going to do what you asked. It's just not going to be you that do it. But I am going to allow for this to happen. Read.
I will be his father.
Yes.
And he shall be my son.
Yes.
If he commit iniquity, I'll chasten him with the rod of man.
Yes.
And with the stripes of the children of men.
Go ahead.
But my mercy shall not depart away from him, as I took it from Saul, when I put away before thee.
Yeah.
And thy house and thy kingdom shall be established forever before thee. Thy throne shall be established forever.
Yeah. So now words matter. He's telling David, by your son, by your seed Solomon, I'm going to establish my kingdom forever. Read.
According to all these words, and according to all this vision, so did Nathan speak unto David.
Read.
Then went King David in and sat before the Lord. And he said, who am I, O Lord? And what is my house that thou hast brought me hitherto?
Yeah, so now Nathan came back to David, and David went unto the Lord to pray. And he humbled himself, and he was like, man, who am I that you have granted my request? Right? Skip down to read 25 and 26. Go ahead. So David's praying. Go ahead.
And now, O Lord God,
yes,
the word that thou hast spoken concerning thy servant and concerning his house,
yes,
establish it forever and do as thou hast said.
Yeah, this is my rest forever. Here will I dwell. Let's establish it. Do it, Lord, Most High God. Yes, he said in verse 22, you are the great God. And what did he say in 26?
And let thy name be magnified forever.
Yes.
Saying, the Lord of hosts is the God of Israel. God over Israel.
Yes.
And let the house of thy servant David be established before thee.
Yeah. Let's go look at something. Psalm 132. Psalm 132. Right? Because this is, I've said this before, this is one of the most misunderstood because we don't apply context and proper biblical hermeneutics, right? So now David was searching for a house for the Lord to dwell in. He went to Nathan, the prophet. Nathan said, do it. Nathan came back and said, hey, the Lord is going to do it. He's just not going to do it by your hand.
Correct.
And David went unto the Lord and said, do it, Lord. You're going to do it? Do it. Establish it forever. You great God. Now watch what this psalm says. Psalm 132, pick it up at verse 1. Psalm 132 and 1.
Lord, remember David in all his afflictions.
Yes.
How he sware unto the Lord and vowed unto the mighty God of Jacob. Surely I will not come into the tabernacle of my house, nor go up into my bed.
Yes.
I will not give sleep to my eyes, or slumber to my eyelids.
Until when?
Until I find out a place for the Lord, a habitation for the mighty God of Jacob.
Yeah, and that's what troubled him to go to Nathan. That's what was in his heart. That was in his mind. He wanted to find a place for the Lord to dwell, the Most High. Skip down to verse 11. We got to keep going. Go ahead.
The Lord has sworn in truth unto David. He will not turn from it. Of the fruit of thy body I will set up thy throne.
Did we just read that?
Mm-hmm.
He gave that to the prophet Nathan. Prophet Nathan said, yes, I will do it. I will establish your seed. I am going to build a house. He gave that to David. Read.
If thy children will keep my covenant.
Big if.
And my testimony.
Yes.
That I shall teach them. Their children shall also sit upon thy throne forevermore.
And that was the plan. The Lord was going to establish this throne forever. That was the plan. He was going to allow for the temple to be built. He was going to put his name in a place where he chose out of the tribe, even the tribe of Judah, in Jerusalem. And that was going to be the place where that was going to where he was going to rest forever.
Mm-hmm.
He would have gathered. He would have done everything that he was supposed to do and going to do. It would have happened right there, right? Through that temple. But he said, if, in verse 12, if thy children keep my covenant. Let me ask you, did his children keep the covenant? Did all of his children down the line keep the covenant?
Nope.
No.
This is it. This is conditional. Read, keep it, where are we?
13.
Read.
For the Lord has chosen Zion.
Did he choose? We read it. Yeah, go ahead.
He had desired for his habitation.
Yes.
This is my rest forever. Here will I dwell.
And that was the plan, right? Go to 1 Chronicles 22. That was the plan. And that temple, we're going to read about the temple, the building of the temple. 1 Chronicles 22. It stood for around 400 years. That was the forever. That was the age. That was the time period in which it stood.
22, bro?
Yeah, 1 Chronicles 22. When you got it, go ahead and pick it up at verse 1.
Then David said, this is the house of the Lord God, and this is the altar of the burnt offering for Israel.
Yes.
And David commanded to gather together the strangers that were in the land of Israel.
I got to pause. I got to go back, right? We read Psalm 132, and we think that that is applying to sometime in our future, right? That's what we think that the Lord is supposed to come down and he's going to dwell in Jerusalem forever. That's why we got to have context. That was during the time of David when he was searching out and seeking a place for the Lord. And he went to the prophet Nathan, and prophet Nathan said, I'm going to establish it. I'm going to choose a place. We're going to look at him choosing the place. The plan was he was going to put his rest there forever. That is not future prophecy. It's not future prophecy. This was about David. Where are we?
Just the beginning.
Go ahead.
And David commanded to gather together the strangers that were in the land of Israel.
Yes.
And he set masons and hewed wrought stones to build the house of God.
Yes.
And David prepared iron in abundance for the nails, for the doors of the gates, and for the joinings, and brass in abundance without weight.
Yeah.
Also cedar trees in abundance for the Zidonians. And they of Tyre brought much cedar wood to David.
Go ahead.
And David said, Solomon my son is young and tender,
Mm-hmm.
and the house that is to be built for the Lord must be exceeding magnificent,
Yes.
of fame and of glory throughout all countries.
Yes.
I I will therefore now make preparation for it.
So he couldn't build it, but he could prepare, right? He could be the architect. He could prepare for this. Go ahead. Because it was promised to David. It was given to him that it was going to happen. Right? Go ahead.
So David prepared abundantly before his death.
Go ahead.
Then he called for Solomon his son and charged him to build a house for the Lord God of Israel.
Read.
And David said to Solomon, my son, as for me, it was in my mind to build a house unto the name of the Lord, my God.
Yeah, it troubled him. He was not going to give sleep or slumber to his eyelids till he found a habitation for the Lord. Right? It was in his mind. It was in his heart to do this. Read.
But the word of the Lord came to me, saying,
Saying what?
Thou hast shed blood abundantly,
yes,
and hast made great wars.
Okay.
Thou shalt not build a house unto my name, because thou hast shed much blood upon the earth in my sight.
But what?
Behold, a son shall be born to thee, who shall be a man of rest.
Not a man of war, but a man of rest. Read.
And I will give him rest from all his enemies round about.
That was a part of what needed to happen in Deuteronomy chapter 12. They had to have rest from all their enemies round about. Read.
For his name shall be Solomon.
Yes.
And I will give peace and quietness unto Israel in his days.
Go ahead. Keep going.
He shall build a house for my name.
So he's going to be the one. Go ahead.
And he shall be my son, and I will be his father.
Yes.
And I will establish the throne of his kingdom over Israel forever.
That was the plan. Here is my rest forever. Here will I dwell. Read.
Now, my son, the Lord be with thee, and prosper thou, and build the house of the Lord thy God, as he has said of thee.
Skip down to verse 17 and read.
David also commanded all the princes of Israel to help Solomon his son, saying, Is it not the Lord your God with you? And hath he not given you rest on every side?
Yep.
For he hath given the inhabitants of the land into my hand.
Yes.
And the land is subdued before the Lord and before his people.
Go ahead.
Now set your heart and your soul to seek the Lord your God. Arise therefore, and build ye the sanctuary of the Lord God, to bring the ark of the covenant of the Lord and the holy vessels of God into the house that is to be built to the name of the Lord.
To the name of the Lord. Go over to 2 Chronicles, right? Skip over to the 5th chapter, 2 Chronicles 5, right? And this is so this pertains to the feast days. Because he said, once I establish out of all the tribes a place in which I choose to put my name, that's where you have to go. Right? So we're walking this down. 2 Chronicles 5, pick it up at 1. Go ahead.
Thus all the work of Solomon made for the house of the Lord was finished.
Yes.
And Solomon brought in all the things that David his father had dedicated.
Yes.
And the silver and the gold and all the instruments put he among the treasures of the house of God.
Keep going.
Then Solomon assembled the elders of Israel and all the heads of the tribes, the chiefs of the fathers of the children of Israel, unto Jerusalem.
Unto where?
Jerusalem.
Read.
To bring up the ark of the covenant of the Lord out of the city of David, which is in Zion.
Yeah, which is Zion. Go ahead.
Wherefore all the men of Israel assembled themselves unto the king in the feast which was in the 7th month.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
And all the elders of Israel came, and the Levites took up the ark.
Yeah.
And they brought up the ark and the tabernacle of the congregation and all the holy vessels that were in the tabernacle.
Yeah.
These did the priests and the Levites bring up.
Go ahead.
Also King Solomon and all the congregation of Israel that were assembled unto him before the ark sacrificed sheep and oxen, which could not be told nor the number for the multitude.
And what they do, read.
For the priests brought in the ark of the covenant of the Lord unto his place.
Yeah, so now they brought the Ark of the Covenant into the temple that was built, right? So now the mobile ark, the tabernacle, is put into the temple. Read.
To the oracle of the house.
Yeah.
Into the most holy place, even under the wings of the cherubim.
Skip down to verse 11 and read.
And it came to pass, when the priests were come out of the holy place, for all the priests that were present were sanctified and did not then wait by course.
Go ahead.
And the Levites, which were the singers, and all of them of Asaph and Heman and Jeduthun.
Yep. Go. Let's jump first. Skip down to 13 to read.
It came even to pass, as the trumpeters and the singers were as one, to make one sound to be heard in praising and thanking the Lord.
Yep.
And when they lift up their voice with the trumpets and cymbals and instruments of music and praise the Lord, saying, For he is good, for his mercy endureth forever.
Yes.
That then the house was filled with a cloud,
Yeah.
even the house of the Lord.
So they're praising now as they brought this in, and now the house is filled with the cloud. Read.
So that the priests could not stand to minister by reason of the cloud.
Why?
For the glory of the Lord had filled the house of God.
Yeah, the glory of the Lord. Keep reading. Go into 6:1. Go ahead.
Then said Solomon, the Lord has said that he would dwell in the thick darkness.
Yes.
But I have built a house of habitation for thee,
Yes.
and a place for thy dwelling forever.
Yeah, this is my rest forever. Here will I dwell. This is the place, right? This is the fulfillment of that. Read.
And the king turned his face and blessed the whole congregation of Israel. And all the congregation of Israel stood.
And what did he say?
And he said, Blessed be the Lord God of Israel, who hath with his hand fulfilled that which he spake with his mouth to my father David, saying, Since the day that I brought forth my people out of the land of Egypt, I chose no city among all the tribes of Israel to build a house in, that my name might be there. Neither chose I any man to be a ruler over my people Israel.
What?
But I have chosen Jerusalem,
I've chosen it. Go ahead.
that my name might be there.
Oh, so now we see this is the fulfilling of what was written in Deuteronomy 12, Deuteronomy 8. This is Deuteronomy 16. This is the progression now. So now that his glory has filled this house, you can't do every man, everybody what he wants to do now.
Right?
This is the place where he chose to put his name. So now we're locked in. You have to come where?
Jerusalem.
Yeah, this is it. He's got rest from all his enemies. He selected out of the tribes. He chose to place his name there. So now 3 times a year, you can't do it anywhere else. You're locked in. Where are we?
6.
Go ahead.
And have chosen David to be over my people Israel.
Yes.
Now it was in the heart of David my father to build a house for the name of the Lord God of Israel.
Yes.
But the Lord said to David my father, For as much as it was in thy heart to build a house for my name, thou didst well in that it was in thy heart.
Yes.
Notwithstanding, thou shalt not build a house, but thy son which shall come forth out of thy loins, he shall build a house for my name.
Keep going.
The Lord therefore hath performed his word that he had spoken. For I am risen up in the room of David my father.
Yes.
And I am set on the throne of Israel.
Yes.
As the Lord promised, and have built the house for the name of the Lord God of Israel.
And done what? Go ahead.
And in it have I put the ark, wherein is the covenant of the Lord, that he made with the children of Israel.
Yeah, this was the covenant he made with the children of Israel. Read verse 12. So now Solomon does what? Read.
And he stood before the altar of the Lord in the presence of all the congregation of Israel, and spread forth his hands.
Yeah, he spread forth his hands. Skipped over to the 7th chapter. Let's keep going. 7 and 1. Keep going.
Now when Solomon had made an end of praying,
So he began to pray. What happened?
the fire came down from heaven and consumed the burnt offering and the sacrifices, and the glory of the Lord filled the house.
Yeah, it's official. Go ahead.
And the priest could not enter into the house of the Lord, because the glory of the Lord had filled the Lord's house.
Read.
And when all the children of Israel saw how the fire came down and the glory of the Lord upon the house, they bowed themselves with their faces to the ground upon the pavement, and worshiped and praised the Lord, saying, For he is good,
Yes.
for his mercy endureth forever.
Keep going.
Then the king and all the people offered sacrifices before the Lord.
Yes.
And King Solomon offered a sacrifice of 22,000 oxen,
Yes.
and 120,000 sheep.
Big pockets. Go ahead.
So the king and all the people dedicated the house of God.
And what? Keep going.
And the priests waited on their offices. The Levites also with their instruments of music of the Lord, which David the king had made to praise the Lord, because his mercy endureth forever.
Yes.
When David praised their ministry, and their priests sounded trumpets before them, and all Israel stood.
Skip down to 8. Read.
Also at the same time, Solomon kept the feast 7 days.
He did what?
Kept the feast 7 days.
So now it's official. We're in Jerusalem. We got a temple. Now Solomon is keeping feasts at this temple 7 days. Go ahead.
And all Israel with him.
Yes.
A very great congregation. From the entering in of Hamath.
Yes.
Unto the river of Egypt. And in the 8th day they made a solemn assembly. For they kept the dedication of the altar 7 days, and the feast 7 days.
And skip down to verse 12 and read it, just for good measure.
And the Lord appeared to Solomon by night, and said unto him,
What?
I have heard thy prayer, and have chosen this place to myself for a house of sacrifice.
Yeah, you can't. I've chosen. So he confirmed all of this. Skip over to the 8th chapter, verse 12 and 13 here.
Then Solomon offered burnt offerings unto the Lord on the altar of the Lord, which he had built before the porch.
Yep.
Even after a certain rate every day.
Every day now. Go ahead.
Offering according to the commandment of Moses.
Yeah, even Numbers 28. You can go to Exodus 29. Same thing. Go read it. Go ahead.
On the Sabbaths, and on the new moon.
Yes.
And on the solemn feast.
And what else?
3 times in the year.
Yep.
Even in the feast of unleavened bread.
What else?
And in the feast of weeks.
Yes.
And in the feast of tabernacles.
It all had to occur now where?
In Jerusalem.
Right there. That's where it had to occur. Go to 1 Kings, the 9th chapter, because this is interesting though. 1 Kings 9. Right? And this is, I mean, I get excited about it, but I realize that this might be a little much for some folks. But let's keep pressing. Maybe you just hit pause on the video and come back to it. Go get you a little Debbie cake or snack or something. 1 Kings 9. Go ahead. Pick it up at verse 1.
And it came to pass when Solomon had finished the building of the house of the Lord.
Yep.
And the king's house, and all Solomon's desire.
We came here because I want you. This is important. Go ahead.
Which he was pleased to do.
Yep.
That the Lord appeared to Solomon the second time, as he had appeared unto him at Gibeon.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lord said unto him,
Yes.
I have heard thy prayer and thy supplication that thou hast made before me.
Yep.
I have hallowed this house,
Yep.
which thou hast built, to put my name there forever. And my eyes and my heart shall be there perpetually.
It should be there forever, right? Perpetually. Well, keep reading. Let's get this. Go ahead.
And if
Go ahead.
thou wilt walk before me, as David thy father walked in integrity of heart,
We gotta have integrity. Keep reading.
and in uprightness,
Yes.
to do according to all that I have commended thee,
And what?
and wilt keep my statutes and my judgments,
Then what?
then I will establish the throne of thy kingdom upon Israel forever.
Yeah, so this is if-then logic, right? It's conditional. If you do this, then I will do this. So here's my rest forever, here will I dwell. But even in Psalms 132, he said if they keep the covenant. If your children keep the covenant. Right? Keep reading.
As I promised to David thy father, saying, there shall not fail thee a man upon the throne of Israel.
But what?
But if he shall at all turn from following me,
What?
ye or your children,
Uh-huh.
and will not keep my commandments and my statutes,
Yes.
which I have set before you, but to go and serve other gods and worship them,
Then what?
then will I cut off Israel out of the land which I have given them.
Yes.
And this house, which I have hallowed for my name,
What would he do?
will I cast out of my sight,
Mm.
and Israel shall be a proverb and a byword among all people.
So we have the benefit of being the Monday morning quarterback. After the game is that we can look back in history and we can see, we know that even Solomon towards the ends of his years, he went awry. He put the people in bondage. We see that in last week's lesson when Pastor was showing the history, right? He also, had strange wives. He did all of those things. But then when the kingdom got split, everything went awry.
Yeah.
And eventually, Nebuchadnezzar came in and he knocked the whole temple down because of their rebellion, right? So we understand, right? We have the benefit of understanding that this was an if-then. So the forever, the perpetual, all of these words, they have to be placed in the proper context. Where are we?
7.
Reread.
8 now. And at this house, which is high, every one that passeth by it shall be astonished, and shall hiss, and they shall say, why hath the Lord done thus unto this land and to this house? And they shall answer, because they forsook the Lord their God, who brought forth their fathers out of the land of Egypt, and have taken hold upon other gods, and have worshipped them, and served them.
And
therefore,
keep going.
Therefore hath the Lord brought upon them all this evil.
Yeah, this was just showing that this was conditional, right? Even though it was going to be established forever, it was forever based upon righteousness, right? Let's go to 2 Chronicles 30. We're going to have to skip a couple places just to make sure we can get this to a point where it's at least satisfactory. So 2 Chronicles 30. So the kings, we just want to show that Passover wasn't kept anywhere. Feast wasn't kept anywhere else, right? So Hezekiah, 2 Chronicles 30. Pick it up at verse 1.
And Hezekiah sent to all Israel and Judah, and wrote letters also to Ephraim and Manasseh, that they should come to the house of the Lord at Jerusalem to keep the Passover unto the Lord, the God of Israel.
Yeah. So Hezekiah wrote this to keep the Passover, right? They kept the second Passover. Let's go over and flip over to 2 Chronicles 35. Let's just show another king doing the same thing, even Josiah, a righteous king. See, because even throughout the different kings that would reign, some of them would be evil. Some of them would, would not uphold the righteousness, would not keep these things. But then you'd have a king that would come back around whose heart was after the Lord. We just want to grab 2 Chronicles 35 and 1 here, and then we're going to keep skating for time purposes. Go ahead.
Moreover, Josiah kept a Passover unto the Lord in Jerusalem.
Where?
In Jerusalem.
Yeah, I mean, this is according to the covenant and according to the law. Go ahead.
And they killed the Passover on the 14th day of the first month.
Okay, so now here's what I want to dispel. Because there's teaching out there that says, okay, we know that Christ is our Passover, and we know we can't kill animals, and we can't do it to the best of your ability. But also, we're in the land of our captivity, right? We're in the land of our captivity. Go to Daniel chapter 1. Go to Daniel chapter 1. See, because there is no feast keeping outside of Jerusalem. There's no feast keeping in the land of your captivity. The place where he chose to put his name was Jerusalem. So Daniel chapter 1, I want to just foot stomp this for a second. We're going to read 1 through 6 here. Go ahead, Brother Rod.
Daniel 1.
Yeah.
In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem, and besieged it.
Yeah, so Daniel was actually taken captive even before Zedekiah, the finalization of all the kings, when they was all. So he was taken captive a little earlier.
Correct.
Right? Under the siege of Jehoiakim from Nebuchadnezzar. Right? Keep going.
And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand.
Yes.
With part of the vessels of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar.
Yeah.
To the house of his God. And he brought the vessels into the treasure house of his God. And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel and the king's seed and of the princes, children whom was no blemish,
yes,
but well favored and skillful in all wisdom and cunning and knowledge and understanding, science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning of the tongue of the Chaldeans.
Yeah, Nebuchadnezzar wanted to teach them. Go ahead. Bring me the best of the best.
Yeah. And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them three years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king.
Now who were they? Verse 6.
Now among these were the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah.
Okay, so I wanted to go here to show you that Daniel was in captivity. Okay, now I made the statement that you can't keep the feast outside of the land of Jerusalem. So let me ask you this question. Would we expect that Daniel kept the feast while he was in Babylon?
No.
We shouldn't have that expectation. Let's go over to the 10th chapter. I want to see if you can pick this up and catch it. Daniel chapter 10. Daniel 10. Pick it up at verse 1.
In the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia,
Yeah.
a thing was revealed unto Daniel, whose name was called Belteshazzar.
Yes.
And the thing was true, but the time appointed was long.
It was not yet. Yeah.
And he understood the thing, and had understanding of the vision. In those days, I, Daniel, was mourning 3 full weeks.
Okay, so how, words matter, details matter. How long was he mourning? 21 days, 3 full weeks, right? And what did he do?
I ate no pleasant bread,
Yep.
neither came flesh nor wine in my mouth, neither did I anoint myself at all, till 3 whole weeks were fulfilled.
So he didn't eat any bread, pleasant bread, any flesh. He didn't eat any wine. Didn't eat any of that, right? But when was this? Pay attention to this. I want you to catch it. I'm tipping you off. Go ahead.
And in the 4th and 20th day of the first month, as I was by the side of the great river, which is Hezekiah, which
Yep.
is the 14th. He passed it. Right?
You caught it.
Yeah.
You caught it. When are you supposed to do Passover and unleavened bread?
The second week, the 14th.
Of what month?
First month.
On the first month, on the 14th day of the month at even, and on the 15th day is unleavened bread, right? But in the 4th and 20th day of the first month, that's day 24, he had already been fasting for how long?
24 days.
21 days.
21.
Yeah. Did he keep the Passover? Did he eat a lamb?
Nope. He has no meat. No meat.
Yeah,
He said, no meat came to my mouth.
right. Let's go to Ezra. Let's go to Ezra chapter 1. Because you can't, in the land, you sing us one of those songs, you can't do it in the land of your captivity. You couldn't do it then, and you can't do it now, even for other reasons. Go back, flip back to Ezra. Ezra chapter 1. Because we will see that the requirements that we've read requires Jerusalem,
And the temple.
a temple, priests, sacrifices. At the very minimum. Right? You're burning incense, you're burning all, you got all of these things. It requires, so if you don't have those elements, you don't have a feast. Right? What I say, Ezra 1.
Yep.
When you got it, pick it up at verse 1. Ezra 1:1. I'm gonna have to skip through.
Now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia,
Yes.
that he had made a proclamation throughout his kingdom, and put it also in writing, saying, thus said king of Persia, the Lord God of heaven hath given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and hath charged me to build him a house at Jerusalem.
Where?
Which is in Judah. Jerusalem.
Yeah. So now Cyrus was reading Isaiah, Jeremiah. He was reading, and he understood that he was going to release them, right? That the Lord was going to use him, and he was going to release them. I think he said Jeremiah, but go ahead.
Who is there among you of all his people? His God be with him, and let him go up to Jerusalem, which is in Judah, and build the house of the Lord God of Israel.
Yes.
He is the God which is in Jerusalem.
Yeah, in Jerusalem. Go ahead.
And whosoever remaineth in any place where he sojourneth, let the man of his place help him with silver and with gold and with goods and with beasts, beside the freewill offering for the house of God. That is in Jerusalem.
Yeah, in Jerusalem. It had to be specifically in Jerusalem. Skip over to the 3rd chapter. We got to keep going. 3rd chapter, read verse 8. I want one verse here. We're going to keep skipping. Ezra 3 and 8. Go ahead.
Now in the 2nd year of their coming unto the house of God at Jerusalem,
Yes.
in the 2nd month
What
began
happened?
Zerubbabel the son of Shealtiel, and Joshua the son of Josadak, and the remnant of their brethren, the priests and the Levites, and all they that were come out of the captivity of Jerusalem, and appointed the Levites from 20 years old and upward to set forward the work of the house of the Lord.
So now Zerubbabel began to do what?
Build the second temple.
Yeah, rebuild the temple. Because they were released from captivity by the hand of Cyrus, and they needed to go and build. Skip over to the 5th chapter. Pick it up at verse 1. Right? So they're building the temple. Right? Go ahead. Ezra 5 and 1.
Then the prophets Haggai, the prophet, and Zechariah, the son of Edu, prophesied unto the Jews that were in Judah and Jerusalem in the name of the God of Israel unto them.
Yeah.
Then rose up Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and Joshua, the son of Zodak, and began to build the house of God, which is at Jerusalem. And with them were the prophets of God helping them.
Yeah. So they ran into some opposition, and the building of the temple was paused for a little bit, and then they restarted. Right. Let me put it in those words. So Zerubbabel
Laid a foundation.
You know, I'm getting caught up because we read Ezekiel or we read we think that Zerubbabel is supposed to build another temple, right? But we don't have proper historical context to read. When we read in prophets like Zechariah, or we read in Ezekiel, we understand that the rebuilding of the temple, that Zerubbabel was to rebuild the temple, and Zerubbabel rebuilt the temple, right? So that was prophetic for the prophet in that time, but it was shortly to come to pass. as Pastor Al showed last week, the prophets served their generation. They weren't looking at something 2, 3, 4,000 years away. So skip over to the 6th chapter of Ezra and pick it up at verse 13. And we just gotta keep hitting this little by little because I gotta try to skate out of here. 6 and 13. 6 and 13. Go ahead.
Then Tatnai, governor of this side of the river, Shethar-Bozzai, and their companies, according to that which Darius the king had sent. So they did speedily.
Yeah.
And the elders of the Jews built it, and they prospered throughout the prophesying of Haggai, the prophet, and Zechariah, the son of Edu.
Yeah.
And they built it and finished it according to the commandment of the God of Israel.
Yeah, so by the way, you go to Zechariah, you read about those stuff. This is what Ezra is talking about. They prospered, they built it, they finished according to the urging on and what the prophesying of Haggai and Zechariah. This is the fulfilling of that, right? But we got to get the proper context. That's another lesson. Keep going.
And according to the commandment of Cyrus and Darius and Artaxerxes, king of Persia.
Nailed it. Go ahead.
And this house was finished on the 3rd day of the month, Adar, which was in the 6th year of the reign of Darius the king.
Okay, so now we went through all of that to show they were in captivity, that Daniel didn't keep the feast in captivity. They were released from captivity. They had to rebuild the temple, right? And if we went to the 2nd chapter of Ezra, they had to get genealogically verified priests. They had to establish all of that, right? Skip down to verse 19 now. So now that the temple's rebuilt, they got priests, they got all of this stuff. Read 19. Go ahead.
7 and 19?
6 and 19. Ezra 6 and 19. Go ahead.
And the children...
Wait, go read. Pick it up as 18, because we got to have priests. Go ahead.
And they set the priests in their divisions,
yes,
and the Levites in their courses for the service of God.
Put them in order. Go ahead.
Which is at Jerusalem.
Which is where?
At Jerusalem.
Okay, now what?
As it is written in the book of Moses.
Yeah, according to the law. You got to do it according to the law. Read.
And the children of the captivity kept the Passover upon the 14th day of the 1st month.
They did what?
Kept the Passover.
So now that they're released and they're in Jerusalem, and they have all of those constituent elements that are required in order to keep the feast properly, they keep the feast. Read.
For the priests and the Levites were purified together.
Yes.
All of them were pure, and killed the Passover for all the children of Israel of the captivity, and for their brethren, the priests, and for themselves. And the children of Israel, which were come again out of the captivity, and all such as had separated themselves unto them from the filthiest of the heathen of the land, to seek the Lord God of Israel, did eat.
And they did what?
And kept the feast of unleavened bread 7 days with joy. For the Lord had made them joyful, and turned the heart of the king of Assyria unto them, to strengthen their hands in the work of the house of God, the God of Israel.
Okay, so I wanted to show, once he established the temple, Solomon put his name there, that was it. You couldn't do it anywhere else. That's why they had to come back to Jerusalem to do that. Let's go to Luke chapter 2. I got to fast forward. I got to skip quite a few scriptures. Let's see if we can tie this together a little bit. If not, most high willing, it'll be a part 2 or 32. However, Luke 2, right? So Yeshua came even to the 2nd temple, right? But they were keeping the law according to the covenant of Moses. Let me just skip right to it. Luke 2 and 41. Luke 2 and 41. Go ahead.
Now his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover.
Yeah, this is Mary and Joseph, right? Go ahead.
And when he was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem after the custom of the feast.
Yes.
And they had fulfilled the days as they returned. The child Jesus tarried behind in Jerusalem, and Joseph and his mother knew not of it.
Yeah. So Yeshua, his parents, they would go every year as according to their custom, and do what?
Keep the Passover.
Yeah, they would go to Jerusalem to do that. Why couldn't they go anywhere else? Why couldn't they stay in the region? Why couldn't they keep it in all their dwelling? Why couldn't they do all of that?
It's lawful.
Yeah, you have to fulfill this. Now here's the thing, right? So people look back and say, okay, well that happened, and Christ died, but after Christ died and arose, like we said in Acts chapter 18, Paul was still keeping the feast, therefore we can keep the feast. Well, again, There were still priests, right? Paul took a Nazarite vow, right? They were still killing animals. They were still doing animal sacrifice, doing those things. But let's pay attention to what Yeshua came to do. Let's go to John chapter 4. And I got to expedite this, and I apologize that I have to do that, but nonetheless, this has to be done. So Yeshua was talking to the woman at the well, and we missed this. But there was something that was coming that was pertinent to feast keeping and really everything under the old covenant, right? John 4, pick it up at verse 20. John 4 and 20, we got to get right to it.
Our fathers worshipped in this mountain, and he say that in Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship.
Now the woman at the well, right? She said, sir, he said, where your husband? I don't have when you have 5. Oh, sir, I perceive that you're a prophet, right? Now, many people just assume that she was not of the stock of Israel. She wasn't in Israel. She wasn't it. I mean, listen to what she said. She said, our fathers worshiped in this mountain. Go back to the history lesson. Pastor Alex, man, I mean, that slogan he got. History solves the mystery. You have to be able to put this stuff together in order to understand what's going on. Without a historical context, and this is what I say, right? Content without context becomes fairy tale. You just make whatever, you just read it and place it wherever you want.
Right.
Right?
Yeah,
and yep. Without context. So she said, our fathers worshiped in this mountain, but however, the Jews say you got to go where?
Jerusalem.
To Jerusalem to worship. Yeah. That's the place where you got to go to do it. That's what the law of Moses says. Right? Now, what did Yeshua say back to her? Go ahead.
Jesus said unto her,
yes?
Woman, believe me.
Believe me what?
The hour cometh when he shall neither in this mountain nor at Jerusalem worship the Father.
Yeah, there's coming a time. Woman, believe this.
Yeah.
There's the hour is coming, even the hour of temptation. This is what he's referring to, by the way. Right? You got to be able to put all this stuff together. There's tribulation coming, and after that, there's going to be a time where you will neither. It's not going to be the mountain. It's not going to be Garrison, and it's not going to be in Jerusalem. I'm doing away with this. Go ahead, keep going.
Ye worship, ye know not what.
Mm-hmm.
We know what we worship.
Yes.
For salvation is of the Jews.
Yeah.
But the hour cometh.
Yes.
And now is.
It's coming upon us. What?
When the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth.
Yes.
For the Father seeketh such to worship him.
Why? Read.
God is a spirit.
Yeah, God is a spirit. See, I've done this physical GPS, Jerusalem, land location based stuff. I've done physical Israelites. And I can tell you, you can Monday morning quarterback this. They were wicked. Right?
Very.
I gave them an inheritance. I gave them everything. You go to Ezekiel 16, I married you. I cleaned you up. And I married you. I gave you the best of the best. And you went around whoring.
That great word.
Even at Babylon. Right? So I'm done with you. I'm going to put you away. So he put away the northern kingdom. And what he's telling her is there's going to come a time where all of this physical stuff, everything that the law of Moses was pointing to, which was pointing to him, by the way, right? The embodiment, the complete, everything that it was pointing to was going to be fulfilled. It was going to be done away with. Everything that was written in the law and the prophets, there would come a time where it would be fulfilled. Right? So God is a spirit. Go ahead.
And they that worship him must worship him in the spirit and in truth.
And in truth. So skip over to Hebrews, the 8th chapter. And I'm probably only going to go about 3 more places. And then we'll just have to get what we can. Hebrews 8, right? Because the writer of Hebrews, I always say, most say Paul, right? He's teaching the Hebrews about not only Yeshua, but he's teaching the Hebrews about covenants. And he's teaching these Hebrews that are used to doing the law of Moses and animal sacrifice and doing all of these, telling them that there's a new covenant, there's a better way, there's a new priesthood, there's a better priesthood, by this being Yeshua, right? He's teaching them this. Now, Hebrews 8, he's talking about this new covenant that he's teaching the Hebrews about. Pick it up at verse 7. Read.
For if the first covenant had been faultless,
Yeah.
place had been sought for the second.
Go ahead.
For finding fault with them,
Yeah, they didn't keep it. Go ahead.
behold, the days come, said the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah.
Yes.
Not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of that land of Egypt.
Yeah, we read that covenant. You can go back and read it in Exodus 19, Exodus 20. You can go to Deuteronomy. You could read through the law. That was the covenant that he made, even on Horeb with them, right? So it's not according to this. I'm going to make a new covenant, not
Right.
according to that covenant. Read.
Because they continued not in my covenant.
Yeah, they didn't keep it. Go ahead.
And I regarded them not, said the Lord.
Yeah, I put them away, right? I put Israel away. Put the northern tribes away. Read.
For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, said the Lord.
What would he do?
I will put my laws in their minds.
Because God is a spirit, right? And he's looking for those to worship him in
spirit and truth.
I'm not looking for phylacteries. I'm not looking for fringes. I'm not looking for physical killing of animals. I'm not looking for that, right? I am looking to fulfill this in your mind. I want to clean up your mind. I want you to love your brother in your mind. I don't want you to physically harm your brother. I want you to start right here.
Right.
Because murder becomes premeditated, right?
That's right.
So if I clean this up, the physical won't happen.
Right.
I'm attacking it at its core.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want you to physically go and commit adultery with your brother's wife. I want you to stop it right here. Don't even look at her and lust after. That's your sister.
The root cause, yeah.
So I put the laws in the mind. Go ahead.
And write them in their heart.
Yes.
And I will be to them a God.
Mhm.
And they shall be to me a people.
And what?
And they shall not teach every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, know the Lord?
Yes.
For all shall know me,
Mhm.
from the least to the greatest.
Yeah, Brother Kevin did a wonderful job on Wednesday night dealing with this. Go ahead.
For I'll be merciful to their unrighteousness.
Yes.
And their sins and their iniquities will I remember no more.
Yeah, even with the chalk stone on the altar. But okay, so we came here, we talked all of that, but pay close attention to what he says in verse 13. Because pay close attention to this. I want you to catch this. Read.
In that he said,
What?
a new covenant he had made the first old.
Yes?
Now, that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away.
Yeah. Yeah. See, the writer of Hebrews, even Paul is saying, I want you to know this is a transition here. We're doing this right now,
Right.
but it's ready to get out of here. It's decaying and waxing old. This new one is ready to come in full-fledged, full force fruition, right? So he's telling them that, yeah, you got to go to Jerusalem. And that's why Paul went to Jerusalem, because he was still under the old covenant law. There was still a temple there. There were still priests, right? So he still was keeping those things. And he said, and I must by all means go to Jerusalem to keep the feast. But oh, by the way,
Not for long.
Look what else he said. Skip over to the 13th chapter, right? These are the things that we miss because understanding is in the details, right? Hebrews 13, we're just going to, let's jump right down to it. Verse 12, we're going to read 12 through 14. Go ahead.
Wherefore Jesus also, that he might sanctify the people with his own blood,
Yes?
suffered without the gate.
Yeah, he's teaching, again, go back and look at how the letter to the Hebrews is composed and how he builds Yeshua up from the beginning. Maybe the Lord angels, he's greater than enemies. This is my son he's doing all of that, right? And he's ending it with the same, that he's the one that's going to sanctify the people. Go ahead.
Let us go forth, therefore, unto him without the camp,
Yes?
bearing his reproach.
Pay attention to verse 14. Read it.
For we have no
For
continuance.
here, right? For here, in this city, in Jerusalem, where the Hebrews dwell, we have what?
No continuing city.
This city is not about to continue. Right here, this first covenant that waxes old and is ready to vanish away, is ready to decay. This city is about to be finito. Done. Right? Finish that.
But we seek one to come.
Even New Jerusalem, right? Let's go to the last two places. I'm going to make it the last two places. Go to Luke 19, right? Let's go to Luke 19. Because we get wrapped around the axle with respect to time and timing and history. We get wrapped around the axle with a lot of things, quite frankly. But if you're going to do the law, if you're going to try to live in the law, if you're going to do wrong, this is how you do wrong right. You got to do it all. Genealogically verified priest, you go to Jerusalem, you find your temple, and you do everything that goes along with it. Otherwise, you're not keeping Pentecost.
Right.
You're not keeping Tabernacles. You're not dwelling in booths 7 days.
Right.
It's vain. It should cause for us to at least, even if you don't fully agree, at least pause and say, maybe there's something more. Maybe I'm missing something. At least stop and think. Am I really doing this?
Yeah.
So watch Luke 19. This is the last two places, right? Let's jump right down to it. Whew. Time to get away. Luke 19, jump right down to 41. Luke 19 and 41.
And when he was come near, he beheld the city.
Yeah, this is Yeshua. He's coming to the city. He's coming near to the city. Go ahead.
And wept over it.
He looked at the city and he cried. Right? Read.
Saying, if thou hast known, even thou, at least in this thy day, the things which belong unto thy peace.
Yeah.
But now they are hid from thine eyes.
Yeah. The judgment is set. It's already gone out. The 70 weeks have been determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city.
Mm-hmm.
It's already set. If you had only known, though, I had chosen Zion, I would have gathered you. I would have rested here. I would have dwelled right here forever. Mm-hmm. If you would have kept my covenant. Right? If you'd only known the things which belong to the peace, but now they hid from thy eyes. Read verse 43.
For the day shall come upon thee, that thine enemy shall cast a trench about thee,
yes,
and compass thee round, and keep thee on every side.
Yeah, this is the hour that cometh. Right? This is the hour of temptation. This is it. Right? And do what?
And shall lay thee even with the ground.
Yeah, and knock all this over. Go ahead.
And thy children within thee.
You're going to kill them all. Go
and
ahead.
They shall not leave thee one stone upon another, because thou knewest not the time of thy visitation.
You didn't know it. You even crucified. Skip over to the 21st chapter. This is going to be our last place, and we'll settle it here. Luke 21, pick it up at verse 5. 21 and 5. Right, so we just read that. He came to the city. He wept over it and said, man, he's crying. The Messiah, God manifested in the flesh, the Holy One, looked at the city and cried because he knew that a mother would have to cook and eat their child.
Mountains following us. Yeah.
Microwave some flesh. They didn't have microwaves back then. Right? That even the Roman army was disgusted by it. Mm-hmm. Even the hired Blackwater, the Syrians and those mercenaries in the army, they didn't want nothing to do with it. They were disgusted. They were in disbelief. Josephus records this. If he'd only known. That's why he would say something like, woe to those that are with child and give suck in those days. Mm-hmm. There's going to be great distress in the land upon this people and this generation, right? So he just said, they're going to cast thee, leave thee with the ground. Let's go ahead and settle it. 21 and 5, read.
And as some spake of the temple, how it was adorned with goodly stones and gifts, he said.
Yeah, so this some, if you go to Matthew 24, you fill in the blanks, just like we did with Exodus 20 and Deuteronomy 5. Those were his disciples, right? 24 and 1, they came and they showed him the buildings of the temple. This is that same account. This is the Synoptic Gospels. This is what Luke is talking about. Read.
As for these things which ye behold, the days will come.
What?
In the which there shall not be left one stone upon another, that shall not be thrown down.
Yeah, that's what he was just talking about. That's what he was weeping over the city. And so the disciples are showing him how great the capital project that Herod did in refurbishing the temple and how beautiful it was. Yeshua said it's going to come a day, come a time, when not one of these stones will be left upon another. It'll all be cast down. You cannot keep the feast. You can't do it according to the law. Now you can impose your own Mosaic laws on the Mosaic laws, and say, well, we're in the land of captivity, or we don't have to do animal sacrifice, but I'm gonna set this apart. And yeah, I know you clean or unclean, but just come in.
I know you touched that body.
I know you touched it. We keeping the law, brother. It's a better way. I'm not throwing stones. I always say my house is glass. But at least consider. At least call me and say, well, if we can't, then what? Let's build. Let's build.
Yeah.
Right?
Adult conversation.
Where are we?
6.
Read it.
7.
Go
And they
ahead.
asked him, saying, Master, but when shall these things be?
When is every stone going to be turned over on this thing? What?
And what sign will there be when these things shall come to pass?
Yeah. What sign shall it be when these things shall come to pass? Let's just drop down. Let's go get the last few verses. Drop down to verse 20, because he's going to tell us what's the sign of these things shall come to pass. Yeshua, tell us. It was a private conversation. They came back to him later, Matthew 24, and say, tell us, when shall these things be? What shall be the sign of the coming of the end of the world, the end of the age? Or when shall these things come to pass? You're talking about tearing up our temple, our city, and our sanctuary, our heaven and earth. It's going to pass. We want to know. Help us. Help me.
Yeah.
This is what he said. 20.
And when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh.
Yeah, that's the time. When you see the abomination that maketh desolate stand in the holy place, that's what Matthew said. Luke was real plain. Right? Luke, who tells you he had more perfect knowledge. Luke laid it out for the layman. Just what he said in Luke, the 19th chapter, when these armies surround you in compassion, this is what Yeshua is confirming again. He said, when you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies. This is what the prophet Daniel was talking about. The desolation, that hour is here. Then what?
Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains.
Yes.
And let them which are in the midst of it depart out.
Yes.
And let not them that are in the countries enter therein too.
Now don't come to Jerusalem. When you see this, I know it's a setup. Now you got to have spiritual understanding. Because you're supposed to come. This is where he was going to gather all nations. Right? He's going to gather all nations. But if you had the spirit, if you had the understanding, if you had the key, if you had the answer, Sway, you would know, oh, it's some armies around there. I'm not going to Jerusalem. I know we're supposed to go 3 times a year, but this is a setup. Yeshua specifically told us, don't come in, because those who came in get locked in the belly of the beast. Where are we?
22.
This will be the last. Go ahead.
For these be the days of vengeance.
Yeah, this vengeance is mine, said the Lord.
That
This is the completion of Isaiah 61. This is the vengeance. These be the days of vengeance that what?
That all things which are written may be fulfilled.
Ah. How many things are all things?
Pretty absolute all things.
I'm not going back and forth with you. It's all. What's written in the prophets, what's written in the law of Moses, the law and the prophets. That this is the completion. We argue this. We make Yeshua lie. We make him say, oh, well, he said all things, but that wasn't really all thing, because we don't understand. So by default, we call Yeshua a liar. He said that all things which are written, even those feast days, would be fulfilled. It has to be within this time frame. Just call me and ask me how. Let's pray about it. Let's talk about it. Let's build about it. Right? Because instead of trying to do wrong right, how about we just try to do right? How about we just do right? I'm Brother Desmond. Reading for me today was Brother Rod. We are the Vineyard of Israel, Orlando. I want to say once again, I really, really pray that the Lord has given you some understanding about this, and we'll continue to build, because there's so much more that goes into these feast days and what the fulfillment thereof looks like. But as Paul said, if you're going to try to keep the feast, I must, by all means, go to Jerusalem to keep the feast. Brother Desmond, I want to say thank you for your time.
Thank you. That was tight.
Yeah. I saw the scriptures. I was like, I can't believe what time it is. It's about 2 hours already.
How many scriptures you cut out?